And it's funny because my best friend lives in the neighborhood right down the street from Holy Family. So for the past 7 years, I had driven past Holy Family Catholic Church. And for some reason, when I saw the sign, I would even say out loud in the car by myself, Holy Family Catholic Church. And it was every time for like the past 7 years. And I don't know why I did it. Now I know why. I had no clue why I did that. And so that was the parish, Holy Family. This is the parish that came into my mind. It was the only parish that came into my mind. It was Holy Family Catholic Church. And so I'm like, okay. So I looked on the website, looked up Father Phil's picture, and I'm like, okay, he doesn't look so scary. Like, I was like, all right. I was like, I'm gonna do this. And so I called, and he wasn't available, so I left a message, and I don't even remember what I said, but it was something along the lines of, you don't know me, I'm pretty much off the streets, I need confession, and I'm not part of your parish. Left my number and just kind of left it at that, and I don't know what I sounded like, I don't know, but he called me back like immediately, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I didn't get to the phone in time, but he left a message saying, I can get you in like 2 days, and I was like, oh man, I was like, okay, so I called him back, left another message like, okay, I'll be there. So I was just a nervous wreck those 2 days. I was just like wanting to throw up, really. I mean, my anxiety was so high. I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. And so the day I came here, I waited, he came out and he took me to this chapel. This is where he took me. And it was a very informal thing, and it had been over 20 years since I had been to confession last. And I don't even remember, the act of contrition and all that, I don't remember. And so he just sat me down in one of these chairs, and I had my journal of everything that I had written down from prayer, of all this awareness of my sins and the choices that I had made. And I took out my notebook and I was like, okay. And he sat patiently, and I went through the whole list. I think there was 12 things on that list, starting with the worst one and went on down. And he patiently listened to me. And then I was crying, and I was like, I had a true act of contrition. I was sorry. I didn't want to live that way anymore, And he looks at me and he goes, I'm not going to give you absolution. And I'm just like, what? I was so confused. I was probably looking at him, I'm like, what in the world? And I was like, I thought this is how this worked. I tell you my sins, you give me absolution, we go on our merry way. And he goes, no, this is going to be a process for you. He's like, this is going to be a process. And I just was thinking, what? Okay, so confused. And so instead he said, I want to give you a tour of the church. And so he took me into the church and showed me all around and told me a little bit about the history and about his history and why he was here, and just showed me around and was very patient, took his time with me. And then he invited me to Mass. And I remember thinking, I was being polite, but I was like, okay, yeah, sure, okay. No intention of coming to Mass. And also during my confession time, he also did say, this isn't something that you just check mark off a list, and then he said, this is going to be a process. And looking back, there was such wisdom that he had in that, because that's what I was doing. I was just, check, all right, God, this is what you want me to do, check, I'm done, I'll go back to Hope Church because that's where I want to be. And so we left it at that. And I was like, okay. And then the next time I went into my prayer room, another word came into my mind, and it was Eucharist. And I was like, here we go. I was like, okay. I was like, nope. Don't want to go. I dug my heels in. This is not going to happen. And I kept ignoring it. And every time I went into prayer, it was at the forefront of my thoughts, would not leave me alone. I was like, but I don't want to. And it just the Eucharist, and again, it was the heart's desires. It was that gut intuition of you need to do this. And there was such a sense of urgency with the confession and the Eucharist. There was it was you need to do this. You need to move now. And now I believe it was because God picked Father Phil for me, because I needed his approach at the time. His approach was very similar to our pastors at Hope Church, and it was just a nice transition, but there was just this sense of urgency with it. And again, it was never a forced thing. I always had a choice, but it was like, you need to move now, like this, you're wanting what you're praying for and you need to move. So at the end of the week, I just felt like, okay, again, if I did not do this, I was going to burst. Like, it was just this building, like all week of me ignoring it. And I was like, nope, you need to do this. So one Saturday evening, I told my husband, I was like, I'm going to wake up early and I'm going to go to Mass. And he looked at me like I was crazy, like I had 3 heads. And I'm like, I don't know why. I was like, I just feel like I need to go. And I was going to go to the 8 o'clock Mass, and then at 11 o'clock I was going to go to Hope Church and serve my coffee and, do the non-denominational church. And he was like, okay. I was like, you don't have to go with me. I was like, the kids don't have to go. I was like, I just need to go. So he just like, okay. So I got up and I went to 8 o'clock Mass, and I sat in the very back, and Father Phil made eye contact with me, and I'm like, okay, he sees me. And I had this panic attack sitting in the pew. I just wanted to run away. Now I think it was just, I was holding on to all these negative things about the Catholic Church from my childhood, and just all the negativity that I thought surrounding the Catholic Church. I think I was just holding on to that, but I was going to have a panic attack. And I had to pray my way through the whole Mass. I could not pay attention. I just was like, I'm gonna pass out. And so I was sitting there struggling in the pew, and then it came time for communion. And I managed to get up, and I managed to get in line. And I was like, I think I'm gonna pass out. I'm lightheaded. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. And so I went up and received communion, and I took it, and I somehow made my way back to the pew, and I knelt down. And this deep peace and this joy that I had never felt before in my entire life just washed over me. And it was just a supernatural thing that it was just, Jesus was like, I'm here. It's okay. And my anxiety just left me. And I was so at peace. And I was on cloud 9. I was just I had so much joy. I didn't know what that felt like. I had never experienced that in my life. And I was just we finished Mass and I left, and I just felt like I could skip to my car. It was so light. And I just was I'm on cloud 9. And I didn't know what it was. And I was just this is wonderful. And I went home, and my kids are you're happy. I mean, they picked up on it immediately. You're just happy. And I'm I am. And I went to Hope Church at 11 just on this cloud that I'm just oh my gosh, this is amazing. And, even people commented, you look radiant today, you're glowing. And I was just okay, it was just this surprise, And I was I don't know what this is, but I want more of it. So I went back the next week, 8 o'clock Mass by myself. And again, sitting in the pew, I was having another panic attack. And I just wanted to run away. I was just I can't do this. And I prayed my way through it. It was okay, Lord, just help me, and just breathing, and I couldn't focus on the Mass again. And I just, all this negativity was swirling around me. And again, it was time for communion, and I got up and I was I think I'm gonna pass out. I'm making my way to the communion line. I was please don't let me pass out in front of all these people. And I received communion and made it back to my pew. And again, it was the same peace and joy that washed over me. And it was just, Jesus is you can trust me. I am here. You're okay. And all my anxiety again left. And I just was overjoyed leaving. I was just overjoyed. And I was just oh my goodness. I just encountered Jesus in the Eucharist. I had never had that experience before, ever. Growing up, I think I was going through the motions in Mass, and I never had an experience like that growing up. And I think I was at the point in my life where I was just open. I was just open to Jesus, and He chose the sacraments to heal me. He could have chosen any other way. He could have just said, okay, you're healed, go on your way. But He didn't. He has taken me through this process of going through the sacrament of reconciliation, going through the Eucharist, and then I got an anointing of the sick as well. And I just want to say, you don't have to be on your deathbed to get anointing of the sick. You don't have to be terminally ill. You know, if you are really spiritually sick, which I think we all are to some degree, you can receive that sacrament. And it's just those three sacraments have really just been amazing in my life, and I need them so badly.